We're now on Daf Ayin Vav Amid Beis. Gedanfa Delisha Fuma. Okay, there's a lot of Aramaic here, but basically, he takes a dough and he wraps the dough around the rim of this large pot, the top lip of the pot. And now he could fill up the cauldron all the way to the top. Umalya Maya V'arteche. So he puts cold water into this large pot, boils it. And what did he gain by this? The rim of dough allows the cauldron to be completely filled. And all you need is, again, you might want to throw in a stone inside, but the Gemara is saying you don't even need to throw in a stone because as a result of this rim, the hot water will go all the way to the top of the kli. It'll sort of overflow over the lip of the pot. Now, the only thing I don't understand here about this Gemara is what about the rim itself? In other words, that dough, why doesn't that, it's covering the rim of the pot. The rim of the pot, therefore, is not exposed to the hot water. That I didn't figure out. Let me just see if by chance he says anything. No, I don't see anything. Okay. Omar Rava, man chakim lemevaki hamilsa. Who's great enough and smart enough to pull that off? And every time you need Hagol, you have to perform this miracle, which you around, put around the rim of the kli, a dough. He loved Rav Akfa Gavarabu. The one who came up with this brilliant idea was a Gavarab, a great man, Rav Akfa Akav. Kosavar kebolo kach polto, ma bolo binitzotzos, af polo binitzotzos. In other words, what kind of a blia took place around the rim of the cauldron on the upper rim? It's only nitzotzos. Nitzotzos are like splashings. He calls it splattering. Okay. So some of the non-kosher food that's being cooked in this cauldron splatters up to the rim. And now when you put hot water and boil it up in the kli, then again, the nitzotzos, these splatterings will go up to the rim and kibolo kachpolto. In the same way that they were absorbed, that's the way they'll be expelled. And the poskim here talk about something called iri kli rishon. Normally, hagolah means not iri kli rishon. You don't pour out from a hot pot to do hagolah on something else. Rather, the pot that has to be kashed is inside the pot. But if you have a keli that's only used with iri kli rishon, that's all you do. Then kibolo kach polto, and all you need is to pour hot water on the kli. So let's say, for example, you have a sink, and very often you put the dishes, that were used, excuse me, in the sink. And then you pour hot water to clean those dishes. Let's say, for example, you have fleshik dishes, you want to use it for milchik, or some meat goes into, your sink while you're heating. So you would say, well, now I have to be machshir it with agola. No, the answer is the only blia took place through iri kli rishon, the spout from which the hot water came, and therefore kabbalah kapolto, and all you need is iri kli rishon. Now, the last part of the Mishnah says, Hasakin Shafa the heat tahor. All you have to do is sort of scrape off the knife, and it's kosher. Omar ukva bar chama v'noatza asar pam b'karka. You need ne'itza b'karka. You have to take the sakin and plunge it into the ground 10 times. Omar Rav Huna Brei de Rabbi Yoshua. So again, I just want to touch on a machlokas here. We're not sure what exactly Rav Ukva meant to say. Did he mean to say that in addition to shafa, to scraping it, you also need ne'itza? Or does ne'itza suffice and substitute for shafa? You need what's called karka v'sula. You need karka that is very hard, and that'll remove any surface level blia of, oily substances from the knife. So it's hard ground. It's never been tilled. Omar of Kahano, Besakin Yofe She'ein Bagumos. This whole idea of ne'itza to get rid of the surface level blia on the sakin, that only works if the sakin doesn't have cracks and crevices. If it has cracks and crevices called gumos, then the blia of Iser gets trapped in those cracks and crevices and it won't be removed through ne'itza. And Tanya Nami Hochi Sakin Yofisha Ein Bagumus Notza Sora Pa'om Bekarka. That ne'itza bekarka is only sufficient for a sakin that's very smooth and it has no gumos, it has no cracks and crevices. Amar of Huna Breder Rav Yeshua, Lechol Bot Sonet. He further limits the heter and the reliability of ne'itza. Ne'itza will be okay if he uses a knife with cold food. But if he uses the knife with hot food, then there's some more profound blia that's like underneath the surface that cannot be removed totally. It's enough for working with sonain, but it's not enough if you want to use the knife to cut something that's hot. Heat has the capacity of drawing out the flavor absorbed in the knife, so that when he uses a knife for something hot, then there's some residue of tam that's below the surface. And ne'itza b'karka will not remove that residue, and the hot food that he's cutting now with this knife will remove that blia. So I don't see it explicitly, but my understanding is that in such a case, he wants to use the knife for chamin, for hot food, then he would have to do hagola and not rely on ne'itza. Ki had Yomer Rabbi Yehuda Ubati Bartuvi, okay, two great scholars. Havayasvi Kamei Deshvar Malka, they were sitting in front of King Shapur, was the king of Persia. Okay, he tells you what years. Okay, yeah. And Pasak Ochal, unbelievable, King Shapur sliced off a piece of an esrog. I see lekamayu esroga, Pasak v'hovle lebati bartuvi. So he offers a slice of esrog to this scholar. Hodar dotza asor zimni bi'ar. Now, it seems to me that what happened is that the king realized that unless he does ne'itza b'karka, because the knife was used for who knows what, then Bati Bartuvi is not going to eat that slice of esrog. So therefore, what did he do? He did neitza. Posek havle lemar zutra, and he cuts off a piece and gives it to Mar Zutra. So this has to do with cutting a dover charf. Let's assume, for argument's sake, that esrog is considered a sharp food like a lemon or an onion. So the Rishonim say that there's a big chiddush in our Gemara that neitza b'karka is sufficient, even if he wants to use the knife for a sharp food, because a sharp food brings out the blia, like we spoke about chamin before. Thrusting the knife into the ground has the capacity of removing certain absorbed flavor from the knife. And that removal of certain of the absorbed flavor from the knife is sufficient to use the knife to cut something cold, even if it's a dover chor. Amalei Bati Bartuvi. So Bati Bartuvi turns to the king, King Shapur, and he says, Ahu Gavra Lav Bar Yisrael. I don't get it. Now, very often in the Gemara, when a person wants to refer to himself, he speaks about himself in third person. And Bati Bartovi doesn't understand the way that King Shapur did the Ne'itza B'karka, apparently only for the sake of Mar Yehuda. So he says, what, am I not Jewish? That you can, cut an esrog with a knife without Ne'itza B'karka and give me a slice and expect me to eat it? Amalei Mar Kimle B'gaveh. Umar Lo Kimle B'gaveh. So King Shapur responds, he says, I know for sure that Rabbi Yehuda is very careful about kashrus. And he would never eat the forbidden thing, and therefore I didn't eat so. But as far as you, Bati Baratofi, I'm not aware. I don't know whether you're so scrupulous with regard to kashrus. Ika diamri, omale idkar mai avdus biurta. King Shapur told Bati Bartuvi, recall what you did last night. The Persians would entertain their guests by providing them with female companions. When they were sent to Bati and Mar Yehuda, Bati accepted these female, accompaniments, but Mar Yehuda declined. Now, who was this Bati? So the Ritva points out that we might not have known this, that Bati was an Eved an Eved Kanani, who never received a get shichur. So therefore he remains an Eved, and an Eved, with regard to marriage laws, is allowed to have relations with a non-Jewish woman. King Shapir was unaware of this and assumed that just as Bati was apparently unconscientious regarding the laws prohibiting relations with a non-Jewish, he didn't know he was an Eved. He was also lax in his observance of the laws regarding non-kosher utensils. So Hadran Alecha Soches HaPoel, V'Solikle Masechta Avoda Zara, and the Mirz Hashem, Hadran Alecha means that we should come back and learn it again. I need a little break from Avoda Zara, so I hope to learn it again at some point, but not in the very, very near future, because right now we have to learn Horios. So I'll just read the first Mishnah in Horios, which is the minhag. Where did I put my Gemara Horios? That's the minhag when you make a siyum. Why do I feel like somebody socked me in the eye? So the Mishnah says, Horu bezdin lavar lachas mikol mitzvahs homer Torah, v'holach hayochid v'yasa shogeg al piem, ben sha'asa sha'asu v'yasu imoyem, ben sha'asu v'yasa achreim, ben shalo asu v'yasa potum neshatol bezdin. So basically, if the bezdin made a mistake and they gave him a horah, a ruling that was accidental, they told him that this chalev is not chalev, it's shumon, and you're allowed to eat it. And he went ahead and he ate it, and lo and behold, it turns out to be chalev, and therefore he violated Isa Kares. Normally he would be chayv achatos. In this case, he's not chayv achatos because tola bebezdin. He had every right in the world to rely on bezdin. So achatos is brought for a shogeg, but every shogeg entails a certain element of negligence. In this case, the Torah establishes that there's no negligence at all, and it doesn't matter whether or not the Bezdin themselves ate from that chalev, whether they ate before he ate and he was just following suit and imitating what they did, whether they ate after he ate, or whether they didn't eat at all. It doesn't matter. Since they gave him a ruling and they said, you're allowed to eat this, it's Shumon, therefore, he's tola bebezdin. If he's tola bebezdin, then he's potter from a karma chat. And Mitzvah Hashem will finish this Mishnah tomorrow.